Welcome to our story today. The millionaire CEO sees his ex-wife at the bus stop with a baby, shocked to realize it's his son. In this captivating video, follow the intriguing story of a powerful billionaire CEO who unexpectedly encounters his past at a humble bus stop. As he waits for his ride, he sees a familiar face, his ex-wife cradling a baby in her arms. The sight alone is enough to stir long-buried emotions. But what truly leaves him astounded is the realization that the child she holds is his son. Inform us if you are enthusiastic about this narrative. If you are, press 1 if you found the video to be enjoyable. If this is not the case, press 0. Your comments are a great source of motivation for me to collect more stories that are uplifting and meaningful.
The CEO saw his ex-wife with a baby at the bus stop, not knowing it was his son, and was surprised. The January wind whipped through the streets of Manhattan, carrying with it the bitter chill of missed opportunities. Alex Rutherford stood at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, his Italian leather shoes planted firmly on the sidewalk as his driver struggled to restart the Bentley's dead engine. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for him that morning. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rutherford," Richards, his chauffeur of 8 years, called out. It might take a while to get her running again. Alex glanced at his Patek Philippe watch. 8:45 a.m. The board meeting started in 15 minutes. "I'll take the bus," he said, surprising even himself. The last time he'd used public transportation he couldn't even remember. The nearest bus stop was a block away. As Alex walked, his wool coat barely keeping the cold at bay, his mind drifted to the quarterly reports waiting on his desk. Rutherford Enterprises had just closed its most successful year yet, but success felt hollow lately. Empty penthouses and silent phone calls to voicemail had become his constant companions. The bus stop came into view, and with it, a figure that made his heart stop. Even from behind, he would recognize that honey blonde hair anywhere. Sarah. The way she slightly tilted her head, the familiar curve of her shoulders. 5 years hadn't changed any of it, but something was different. In her arms, she cradled a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Alex's feet moved of their own accord, carrying him closer. The baby couldn't be more than 6 months old. As he approached, the infant turned his head, and Alex felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Those eyes, he saw them every morning in the mirror, the same distinctive Rutherford green that had marked his family for generations. "Sarah?" His voice came out rougher than intended. She turned, and the color drained from her face. "Alex." The name fell from her lips like a prayer and a curse combined. The baby squirmed in her arms, reaching one tiny hand toward Alex's face. It's been a while." Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from the child. "How have you been?" Sarah pulled the baby closer to her chest, a protective gesture that spoke volumes. "Fine. We're fine." Her voice trembled slightly. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in your usual motorcade?" "Car trouble." He gestured vaguely behind him, still transfixed by the infant who now watched him with undisguised curiosity. "Your son, he's beautiful." A flash of panic crossed Sarah's face. "Thank you. His name is Ethan. The father must be proud." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Sarah's response came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Yes, he is. Very much so." The bus appeared at the corner, and Sarah took a step back. "This is us. It was unexpected seeing you, Alex." "Wait." He reached for her arm but stopped himself. "Could we maybe get coffee sometime? Catch up?" "I don't think that's a good idea." She bounced Ethan gently as he began to fuss. The past should stay in the past. The bus doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. Sarah hurried aboard, never looking back. Alex stood rooted to the spot, watching through the window as she settled into a seat. Ethan peered over her shoulder. Those familiar green eyes locked on Alex until the bus pulled away. Back in his office an hour later, Alex couldn't focus on the merger documents before him. The image of Ethan's eyes haunted him. He pulled up his calendar from 5 years ago, counting backward from today. The timing. It was possible. More than possible. "Cancel my afternoon appointments," he told his assistant through the intercom, "and get me everything you can find on Sarah Bennett's whereabouts for the past 5 years. The response came immediately. "Yes, Mr. Rutherford. Although, sir, there might be an easier way. Your mother mentioned running into Ms. Bennett at Mount Sinai Hospital about a year ago. She never told you." Alex's fingers tightened around his pen. His mother had known, The same woman who'd always claimed Sarah wasn't suitable fine for their family. The pen snapped, sending ink spreading across the pristine white contract like a dark tide. He opened his desk drawer, pulling out the only personal item he kept at work. A small velvet box containing the engagement ring he'd never had the chance to give Sarah. The night he'd planned to propose, she'd ended things instead. Her reasons hadn't made sense then. Something about needing space, about him choosing his company over their relationship. He'd been too proud, too hurt to fight for her. Now, looking back, the pieces began falling into place. The timing of their breakup, his mother's sudden interest in his love life, Sarah's complete disappearance from their social circle. Had his mother orchestrated it all? Alex pulled out his phone, finger hovering over Sarah's old number. He'd never deleted it, but what could he say? Sorry, my mother might have ruined our lives. I think you're hiding my son from me. The words seemed inadequate against the weight of 5 years of silence. Instead, he opened his browser and typed, DNA testing, confidential results. The answer was there, waiting to be uncovered. But something held him back. Sarah's fear when she'd seen him, the protective way she'd held Ethan. She had her reasons for keeping this secret. If he wanted answers, he'd need to earn them. Alex stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Sarah was living a life he should have been part of, raising a child who might be his son. The ruthless CEO in him wanted to demand answers, to leverage his resources and uncover the truth immediately. But the man who still loved her knew better. He would do this right. Prove to Sarah that he wasn't the same workaholic who'd let her slip away 5 years ago. Show her that he could be the man, the father, that she and Ethan deserved, even if it meant dismantling every wall he'd built around himself since losing her. The intercom buzzed. Sir, your mother is on line 1. She says it's urgent. Alex stared at the blinking light on his phone. Tell her I'm in a meeting. He grabbed his coat. And find out which bus route Sarah was taking this morning. It's time I started taking public transportation more often. The city sprawled before him, a maze of possibilities and second chances. Somewhere in that concrete labyrinth, a little boy with his eyes held the key to everything he'd lost, and everything he might still gain. Alex straightened his tie, a plan already forming in his mind. Sarah could hide the truth, but she couldn't hide from it forever. And this time, he wouldn't let her face it alone. Alex sat in his home office, staring at the grainy security footage from the bus stop. He'd watched it 17 times now, studying every detail of Sarah's interaction with Ethan, the way the baby reached for him, those unmistakable green eyes catching the morning light. His gut told him what his heart already knew. Ethan was his son. The doorbell echoed through his penthouse. Alex closed the laptop as his mother, Victoria Rutherford, swept into the room like a perfectly coiffed hurricane. Her Hermes scarf fluttered behind her, a silk banner of wealth and privilege. Darling, you've been avoiding my calls. Victoria perched on the edge of a leather armchair, her posture rigid. The board is concerned about your distraction lately. The board? Or you? Alex kept his voice neutral, remembering Sarah's panic at the bus stop. Tell me, Mother, how long have you known about Sarah's baby? Victoria's perfectly lined lips tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Mount Sinai Hospital about a year ago. You ran into her there. Alex leaned forward. Did you know she was pregnant when she left me? Alex, dear, that was 5 years ago. Sarah made her choice. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. She wasn't right for you, or for this family. That wasn't your decision to make. The words came out sharper than intended. What did you say to her? Victoria's composure cracked just slightly. I merely helped her see reason. The girl was holding you back. Your father had just passed. The company needed you focused. What did you say? Each word fell like a hammer. I showed her the prenuptial agreement our lawyers had drafted. Victoria's voice hardened. Was it the clause about children born within the first 5 years of marriage requiring genetic testing before any inheritance claims? She was furious. Accused me of thinking she was a gold digger. The next day, she ended things with you. Alex felt the room spin. You had no right. I had every right. I'm your mother. Everything I've done has been to protect you, to protect this family's legacy. Victoria stood, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. Sarah was beneath you, a simple girl from Brooklyn who might have been carrying my child when you drove her away. Alex's voice was deadly quiet. Victoria paled. What are you saying? I saw her yesterday, with her son. Alex pulled up a photo on his phone, a still from the security footage. Look at him, Mother. Look at his eyes. Victoria's hand flew to her throat. That's impossible. She would have told you, would she? After you made it clear our family would treat any child of hers with suspicion. Alex's laugh was bitter. You didn't protect our legacy. You might have destroyed it. We can fix this. Victoria reached for her phone. I'll have our lawyers. No. Alex's voice cut through the air. You've done enough. Get out. Alex, be reasonable. Get out. He stood, towering over her. And if you go anywhere near Sarah or that child, I'll step down as CEO. Let's see how the board feels about that. After Victoria left, Alex poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. The liquid burned, but not enough to erase the image of Sarah's face when she'd mentioned his mother at the hospital. The fear, the hurt, the resignation. His phone buzzed. A text from his private investigator, Sarah's bus route, her work address, her apartment location, all neatly laid out like pieces on a chessboard. But this wasn't a game he could win with strategy alone. The next morning found him on the same bus route, dressed in clothes that wouldn't draw attention. 3 days passed this way, each morning watching Sarah and Ethan from a respectful distance. He learned their routine. The daycare drop-off, Sarah's job at a publishing house, the small cafe where she got her morning coffee. On the 4th day, he finally gathered his courage. The cafe was quiet when Sarah walked in, Ethan babbling happily in his stroller. Alex stepped in line behind her. Grande caramel macchiato, extra shot, Sarah told the barista. Add a black coffee to that order, Alex said quietly. I'll pay for both. Sarah spun around, nearly knocking over a display of travel mugs. Are you following me? Yes. No point in lying. We need to talk, Sarah. No, we don't. She gripped the stroller handle tightly. Whatever you think you know. I know my mother interfered. Alex kept his voice low, conscious of the other customers. I know about the prenup she showed you, and I think I know why you left. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You don't know anything. Then tell me. He gestured to a quiet corner table. Please. 5 minutes. Ethan chose that moment to reach up, grabbing Alex's tie with surprising strength. The baby laughed, a sound so pure it made Alex's chest ache. Sarah stared at her son, then at Alex. 5 minutes, she whispered. That's all. They sat, Ethan contentedly playing with a teething ring. Alex couldn't stop looking at him. The shape of his nose, the curl of his hair, everything screamed Rutherford genetics. Your mother, Sarah began, then stopped. She made it very clear what the family thought of me, that any child I had would be treated like a potential threat to the Rutherford fortune. I never knew about the prenup. Alex's hands clenched around his coffee cup. I would have torn it up. Would you? Sarah's laugh was hollow. You were barely home, Alex. Always at the office, always just one more meeting. When I found out I was pregnant, she trailed off. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. A tear slipped down her cheek. And the night before I left, you were on a conference call to Tokyo. Said you'd call me back, you never did. The memory hit him like a physical blow. He'd fallen asleep at his desk that night, phone dead beside him. When he'd finally made it home the next evening, Sarah was gone. I thought, Sarah wiped her eyes. I thought if you couldn't make time for me, how could you make time for a baby? Then your mother showed up with that prenup, talking about genetic testing and inheritance claims. It felt like the universe was sending me a message. Ethan babbled, reaching for Alex again. Without thinking, Alex offered his finger, and the baby gripped it tight. He knows, Sarah whispered. Somehow, he knows. Let me prove you wrong, Alex said softly. About everything you thought I couldn't be. Let me be part of his life, part of both your lives. It's not that simple. It can be. Alex watched his son, playing with his finger. I'm not asking for anything except a chance, Sarah. No lawyers, no tests, no demands. Just time. Sarah looked at Ethan, then back at Alex. The wall behind her eyes cracked. Just slightly. He needs a diaper change, she said finally. If you want to learn, now's your chance. Alex stood, hands shaking slightly. Show me. As they walked to the restroom, Ethan still clutching his finger, Alex felt something shift in the universe. A second chance, wrapped in a blue blanket and sporting his eyes. This time, he wouldn't let it slip away. The diaper-changing lesson at the cafe marked a fragile beginning. 2 weeks had passed. and Alex found himself adapting to a new routine, one that revolved around stolen moments with Sarah and Ethan before work. He'd mastered the art of bottle preparation, learned the difference between burping positions, and memorized Ethan's favorite lullabies. Today, however, was different. Sarah had agreed to let him visit their apartment for the first time. As Alex rode the elevator to the 5th floor of the modest Brooklyn building, his heart thundered against his ribs. The teddy bear he'd brought felt inadequate in his hands, a poor offering for lost time. Sarah opened the door before he could knock. "He's just waking up from his nap," she said, stepping aside. The apartment was small but warm, filled with touches of Sarah's personality. Books everywhere, family photos, and toys scattered across a bright playmat. Ethan's crib occupied a corner of the living room. As Alex approached, the baby's face lit up with recognition, tiny arms reaching skyward. Without hesitation, Alex lifted him, inhaling that indescribable baby scent. "He's getting bigger," Alex murmured, noting how Ethan's head fit perfectly in the crook of his neck. "They do that," Sarah replied, but her smile held a trace of sadness. "Coffee? Please." Alex followed her to the kitchen, Ethan still in his arms. The domesticity of the moment struck him. This could have been their life all along. Sarah busied herself with the coffee maker, her back turned. "Your mother called yesterday." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alex tightened his hold on Ethan instinctively. What did she want? To apologize. Sarah's laugh was brittle. She offered to set up a trust fund for Ethan. Said she wanted to make things right. I told her to stay away from you both. Anger coiled in Alex's stomach. I know. She mentioned that too. Sarah turned, her eyes meeting his. She also said something interesting about you stepping down as CEO if she interfered. I meant it. That's what scares me. Sarah handed him a coffee mug, careful not to disturb Ethan, who was now dozing against Alex's chest. The Alex I knew lived and breathed that company. He would never have threatened to leave it. The Alex you knew was an idiot. He took a sip of coffee, perfect as always. She still remembered how he liked it. I've had 5 years to think about my priorities. And what are they now? Before Alex could answer, his phone buzzed. The board meeting he'd completely forgotten. I have to take this, he said apologetically, shifting Ethan to Sarah's arms. Sarah's face closed off immediately. Some things don't change after all. No, wait. Alex declined the call. This conversation is more important. Is it? Sarah's voice cracked. Because I've heard that before. Alex, just one call, just one meeting. Meanwhile, I spent nights alone, planning a future you were never going to be part of. That's not fair. The words came out sharper than intended, making Ethan stir. I'm trying here, Sarah. I've shown up every morning for 2 weeks. I'm learning to be a father. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When board meetings and business trips start taking priority again? Sarah's eyes glistened. I can't let Ethan get attached only to lose you. Alex set down his coffee cup carefully. Like you did? The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah turned away, her shoulders shaking slightly. Ethan, sensing the tension, began to whimper. I'm sorry, Alex said softly. That was out of line. No, it wasn't. Sarah's voice was barely audible. It was honest. And you're right. I'm terrified of history repeating itself. Alex stepped closer, gently touching her shoulder. Sarah, look at me. She turned, tears streaming now. Ethan reached for Alex again, and without thinking, Sarah let him take the baby. I'm not asking you to trust me completely, Alex said, bouncing Ethan gently. I haven't earned that yet, but I'm asking you to watch me try. Every day, every moment I can steal, until you believe that nothing, not the company, not my mother, not anything, matters more than this. Sarah wiped her eyes. And when you have to choose between a crucial meeting and Ethan's first steps, I choose Ethan. The answer came without hesitation. Always Ethan. You say that now, but a sharp knock at the door cut her off. Through the frosted glass, a familiar silhouette loomed. Mother. Alex's voice turned to ice. He handed Ethan back to Sarah. Stay here. Opening the door, revealed Victoria Rutherford in all her imperious glory. Alexander, you're not answering your phone. The board is waiting. I told you to stay away. Alex stepped into the hallway, pulling the door shut behind him. Don't be childish. We need to handle this situation properly. Victoria's eyes darted to the closed door. I've spoken to our lawyers. We can arrange a quiet DNA test. Set up appropriate support. There will be no tests. Alex's voice dropped dangerously low. No lawyers, no interference. You can't possibly think you can handle this delicate situation without proper legal guidance. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand reached for the doorknob. Let me talk to her. I can make her see reason. Alex caught his mother's wrist. Like you did 5 years ago. I did what was necessary. Victoria jerked her hand away. Everything I've done has been for your own good. No. The word felt like freedom. Everything you've done has been for your own vision of what my life should be. But that ends now. Alexander, I'm calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Alex straightened to his full height. To announce my temporary leave of absence as CEO? Victoria's face went ashen. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. He turned back to the door. Goodbye, Mother. Inside, Sarah stood frozen. Ethan clutched to her chest. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Alex crossed the room in 3 strides, wrapping both of them in his arms. Ethan snuggled between them, content in their shared warmth. I meant what I said. Sarah, I choose him. I choose us. Sarah's free hand fisted in his shirt. I'm still scared. Me too. Alex pressed his lips to her temple. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Outside, Victoria's heels clicked away down the hallway, carrying with them the echoes of a past that no longer held power. In the quiet apartment, surrounded by building blocks and board books, Alex Rutherford found himself exactly where he was meant to be. The boardroom of Rutherford Enterprises felt different that morning. Alex sat at the head of the mahogany table, his usual power suit replaced by a casual button-down, the same one that still carried traces of Ethan's breakfast from earlier. The 14 board members watched him with a mixture of concern and curiosity. His mother's seat remained conspicuously empty. A leave of absence? Richard Montgomery, the longest-serving board member, leaned forward. Alex, the Miller merger is weeks away. The timing couldn't be worse. The timing is exactly why it has to be now. Alex passed out folders containing his temporary transition plan. I've groomed Charlotte Hayes for this moment. She's ready to step in as interim CEO. Charlotte, his CFO of 3 years, straightened in her chair. I appreciate the confidence, but your mother made it clear. My mother no longer speaks for this company. Alex's voice carried the weight of certainty. Or for me. Murmurs rippled around the table. Victoria Rutherford's influence had been absolute for decades. Her absence today spoke volumes. This is about the Bennett woman, isn't it? Douglas Pierce, another board veteran, fixed Alex with a knowing stare. And her child. Alex felt his jaw tighten. My personal life is not up for discussion. It is when it affects the company. Pierce tapped the folder. We've all heard the rumors. If there's a potential heir involved, there will be no discussion of heirs or inheritance. Alex stood, his palms flat against the table. I'm taking this leave to focus on my family. Charlotte will handle day-to-day operations. I'll be available for major decisions, but otherwise, I'm stepping back. The vote is merely a formality that requires your mother's presence, Montgomery pointed out, not according to the bylaws. Alex nodded to Charlotte, who distributed another set of documents. As majority shareholder, I can call for this vote without her. The choice is simple. Accept my temporary leave with a smooth transition, or I resign completely. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew Alex had built Rutherford Enterprises into what it was today. His departure would send the stock plummeting. The vote passed unanimously. Hours later, Alex stood in Sarah's small kitchen, recounting the meeting while she prepared dinner. Ethan played in his high chair, more interested in wearing his mashed peas than eating them. A leave of absence. Sarah paused in her stirring. Alex, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. He grabbed a washcloth, gently wiping Ethan's face. Besides, I'm not completely stepping away, just prioritizing. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text message that made her frown. Your mother's been busy. What do you mean? She handed him the phone. On the screen was a link to a business news article. Rutherford Enterprises in crisis. CEO takes sudden leave amid family drama. Below it, photos of Sarah and Ethan leaving their apartment, clearly taken with a long lens. Alex's hands shook with rage. I'll have our PR team. That's not all. Sarah pulled up another message. The daycare called. Someone claiming to be Ethan's grandmother tried to pick him up today. The washcloth dropped from Alex's hand. She wouldn't dare. They didn't let her in. Sarah's voice trembled. But Alex, she knows where he goes, where we live. Everything. Pack a bag. The words came out clipped, decisive. Both of you are staying at my place tonight. Running won't solve this. It's not running. It's protecting our son while I deal with this. Alex moved to the living room, already dialing his security team. The penthouse has better security and my mother doesn't have access. Sarah followed him, Ethan on her hip. Our son? Alex froze, realizing what he'd said. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have assumed. No. Sarah touched his arm. You're right. He is our son. And that's exactly why we need to face this together. Ethan reached for Alex, tiny fingers grasping at air. Without hesitation, Alex took him, breathing in that familiar baby scent that had become his anchor. I have a better idea, Sarah said quietly. Instead of hiding, let's end this. Take the DNA test. Alex stared at her. Sarah, you don't have to prove anything. This isn't about proving anything. She squared her shoulders. It's about taking away your mother's power. Once it's official, she can't spin stories or make threats. Ethan will be protected legally. Are you sure? No. Sarah managed a weak smile. But I'm tired of living in fear of Victoria Rutherford. Aren't you? Before Alex could respond, his phone rang. Charlotte Hayes, turn on the news. His interim CEO said without preamble. Your mother just called a press conference. Alex grabbed the remote, flipping to the business channel. There stood Victoria Rutherford, perfectly composed behind a podium bearing the Rutherford Enterprises logo. Concerns about the company's future leadership, she was saying. While my son takes time to address certain personal matters, I will be resuming my former position as CEO. The TV went black. Sarah had hit the power button, her face pale but determined. She can't do this, Alex said, more to himself than Sarah. The board voted. She's counting on the scandal. Sarah's voice was steel. Photos of your secret family. Rumors about an illegitimate heir. She thinks the board will panic. Ethan squirmed in Alex's arms, reaching for his mother. The three of them stood there, a tableau of everything Victoria Rutherford thought she could destroy. Call your lawyer, Sarah said. Set up the DNA test. Tonight. Sarah, we do this now, on our terms. She took Ethan, kissing his forehead. No more hiding. No more games. Victoria Rutherford wants a war. Let's give her one she can't win. Alex pulled out his phone again, this time dialing his personal attorney. As it rang, he watched Sarah soothing their son, and felt a clarity he hadn't known in years. His mother had underestimated them both. She thought Sarah was still the scared young woman from 5 years ago. She thought Alex would choose the company over his family again. She was wrong on both counts. James, Alex said when his lawyer answered, I need you to arrange something. Tonight. And then I need you to prepare papers removing Victoria Rutherford from the board of Rutherford Enterprises. Permanently. The game had changed. Victoria had played her hand, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. Love made people dangerous. And there was nothing Alex Rutherford loved more than the two people standing in front of him. The private medical facility gleamed with sterile efficiency as Alex, Sarah, and Ethan waited in a discreet examination room. It was nearly midnight, but James had pulled strings to get the DNA test done immediately. The late hour had worked in their favor. No press, no prying eyes, just the wait of a moment 5 years in the making. It won't hurt him? Sarah asked for the third time, cradling Ethan against her chest. The baby was drowsy but fighting sleep, fascinated by the unfamiliar surroundings. Just a gentle cheek swab, Dr. Peterson assured her. The physician, a longtime friend of James, had agreed to handle the test personally. He won't feel a thing. Alex watched as the doctor approached with the testing kit. His own cheek had already been swabbed, the sample sealed and labeled. Now came the moment that would change everything, or perhaps just confirm what his heart already knew. Ethan fussed slightly as the doctor brought the swab to his cheek, but Sarah's soft humming calmed him. The genetic material that could destroy his mother's schemes was collected in seconds, painless and simple. Results will be ready in 24 hours, Dr. Peterson said, carefully packaging the samples. Given the sensitive nature of this situation, I'll deliver them personally. As they left the facility, Alex's phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members and reporters. Victoria's press conference had ignited a firestorm. The stock had already dropped 5 points in after-hours trading. You should respond, Sarah said quietly as they drove through the empty streets. The company can wait. Alex reached over to squeeze her hand. Here, right now. You and Ethan are what matter. They arrived at his penthouse just as rain began to fall. The doorman, already briefed by security, whisked them through a private entrance. Sarah gasped softly as they entered the apartment. She'd never seen it before. "It's different than I imagined," she admitted, taking in the stark modernist decor. Very old me," Alex corrected, leading them past the minimalist living room to a more comfortable study. "I've been thinking about redecorating, making it more family-friendly." The hope in his voice was unmistakable. Sarah settled on a leather couch, Ethan finally succumbing to sleep in her arms. "Let me show you the guest room," Alex offered. "You both must be exhausted." "Alex," Sarah's voice stopped him. "What happens tomorrow? When the results come back?" He knelt before her, one hand gently stroking Ethan's back. "You know what they'll say. But what happens then? Your mother won't just disappear. The press won't stop digging." Her voice cracked. "Our quiet life is already changed," he finished softly. "But we can face it together, if you want that." Sarah looked down at their sleeping son, then back at Alex. "I never stopped wanting that. I just stopped believing it was possible." The confession hung between them, heavy with 5 years of loss and longing. Alex reached up, brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "about that night. The one when you tried to tell me about the baby." Sarah tensed. "Alex, let me finish, please." His hand found hers. "I've replayed that night 1,000 times. The Tokyo call and falling asleep at my desk, waking up to find you gone. But I never knew what you were going to say. What would you have told me if I'd just picked up the phone?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently stroking Ethan's hair. "I had it all planned out. I'd made your favorite dinner, bought a tiny pair of baby shoes." She smiled sadly. "I was going to tell you that despite everything, your mother's disapproval, our fights about your work hours, I still believed in us, that the baby was a sign we could make it work. And instead, I proved you wrong." "Did you?" Sarah met his gaze. "Because the man sitting here now, the one who's willing to risk everything for his son, that's the man I always knew you could be." Before Alex could respond, his phone lit up with an incoming call. Charlotte Hayes. "The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow morning." His interim CEO sounded strained. "Your mother's lawyers are involved. They're challenging the leave of absence." Alex glanced at Sarah, saw the fear creeping back into her eyes. "Tell them I'll be there, with proof that will end this once and for all." After hanging up, he turned back to Sarah. "Come with me tomorrow, both of you." "To the board meeting?" "Alex, that's crazy." "It's perfect." He sat beside her on the couch, careful not to disturb Ethan. "My mother wants to paint you as some sort of threat to the company. Let them see the truth. A mother protecting her child, a family trying to heal." Sarah studied his face, searching for doubt and finding none. "Your mother will be there." "Good." Alex's jaw set firmly. "Let her see exactly what she almost destroyed, and what she'll never touch again." Ethan stirred slightly, one tiny hand clutching Sarah's shirt. In sleep, his resemblance to Alex was even more striking. The same slight furrow between his brows, the same way his lashes fanned against his cheeks. "Okay," Sarah whispered. "Tomorrow we face her together." Alex leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Ethan's head. Then, after a moment's hesitation, to Sarah's temple. She didn't pull away. "Get some rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow we change everything." As he showed them to the guest room, Alex's phone buzzed again. A message from Dr. Peterson. The results would be ready by 8 a.m., just in time for the board meeting. In 12 hours, his mother's carefully constructed world of control and manipulation would shatter, and from the pieces, Alex silently vowed, they would build something stronger, something real, something that even Victoria Rutherford couldn't break. 8 a.m. arrived with the weight of destiny. Alex stood in his office at Rutherford Enterprises, reviewing the DNA test results Dr. Peterson had delivered moments ago. The numbers and scientific terminology all pointed to one irrefutable conclusion: 99.99% probability of paternity. Sarah sat on the leather couch nearby, helping Ethan with his morning bottle. They'd dressed him in a tiny blue sweater vest and khakis, an outfit that made him look impossibly like a miniature version of Alex. "The board's assembling now," Charlotte Hayes announced, stepping into the office. She paused at the sight of Sarah and Ethan. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. Alex tucked the test results into a folder. Is she here? Victoria arrived 10 minutes ago. She has 3 lawyers with her. Sarah's hand tightened around the bottle. Maybe we should wait in here. No. Alex's voice was gentle but firm. We do this together, remember? The walk to the boardroom felt like a march to battle. Security personnel lined the hallway, a necessary precaution given the media circus outside the building. Through the glass walls, Alex could see the board members settling into their seats, his mother holding court at the far end of the table. Victoria's perfectly composed expression cracked when Alex entered with Sarah and Ethan. This is a closed board meeting, she snapped. Not a family reunion. Funny you should mention family. Alex guided Sarah to a seat near Charlotte, then took his position at the head of the table. That's exactly why we're here. If you think parading your situation will sway this board, Victoria began. The situation, Alex cut in, is quite simple. 5 years ago, you interfered in my personal life in a way that had devastating consequences. You drove away the woman I loved while she was carrying my child. You kept their existence from me even after discovering them. And now you're trying to use that same child as leverage to seize control of this company. Murmurs rippled around the table. Victoria's lawyers shuffled papers nervously. These are baseless accusations, Victoria said smoothly. If Ms. Bennett claims this child is yours, surely she won't object to proper legal proceedings. Alex slid the DNA results across the table. No need. The test is already done. The room fell silent as the papers made their rounds. Victoria's face went ash-white as she read the results. This changes nothing. She recovered quickly. The board's concern isn't about paternity. It's about leadership. Your judgment is clearly compromised. My judgment has never been clearer. Alex stood, commanding the room. For 5 years, I put this company above everything. I missed birthdays, canceled vacations, ended relationships, all to build something I thought mattered more than anything else. He walked to where Sarah sat with Ethan, who was watching the proceedings with curious green eyes. I was wrong. This company is important, but it's not everything. That's why I'm not just taking a leave of absence, I'm restructuring the entire board. Victoria shot to her feet. You can't. Actually, I can. Alex nodded to James, who distributed another set of documents. As majority shareholder, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove you from the board, Mother, permanently. This is ridiculous, Victoria sputtered. Down the shareholders will be relieved to know that the company is moving forward with stable leadership and clear succession planning. Alex gestured to Charlotte. Mrs. Hayes has proven herself more than capable, and now that my son's position is legally established, the future of Rutherford Enterprises is secure. You would choose them over your own mother. Victoria's voice shook with rage. No, Mother. You made that choice 5 years ago. Alex's tone softened. You chose control over family, power over love. That ends today. Ethan chose that moment to let out a happy gurgle, reaching toward Alex with grabby hands. Without hesitation, Alex lifted him, holding his son as he faced the board. The vote is simple, he continued. Remove Victoria Rutherford from the board, confirm Charlotte Hayes as CEO during my temporary leave, and approve a new family-first corporate culture that aligns with our values. All those in favor. Hands rose around the table one by one. Even Richard Montgomery, Victoria's oldest ally, raised his hand after a long moment's hesitation. No, Victoria whispered. You can't do this to me. Everything I did was for you. Everything you did was for yourself. Alex bounced Ethan gently as the baby played with his tie. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. Security will escort you. As Victoria was led away, her perfectly maintained facade finally cracking, Sarah stood and moved to Alex's side. Are you okay? Better than okay. He shifted Ethan to one arm, using the other to pull Sarah close. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I should be. The board members filed out, leaving the small family alone in the vast boardroom. Through the windows, New York City sprawled before them, bathed in morning light. So what now? Sarah asked softly. Now? Alex looked at his son, then at the woman he'd never stopped loving. Now we start over. Together. If you'll have me. Sarah's answer was to lean up and kiss him. Their first kiss in 5 years, with Ethan giggling between them. It tasted like coffee, and hope and second chances. Outside the boardroom, Victoria Rutherford's heels clicked down the hallway for the last time. carrying away the echoes of old wounds and missed opportunities. But inside, surrounded by the warmth of his newfound family, Alex Rutherford finally understood what true power meant. It wasn't about control or corporate dominance. It was about the strength to choose love over fear, family over fortune, and the courage to rebuild what was broken, one precious moment at a time. 4 weeks after Victoria's departure from Rutherford Enterprises, Alex sat in Sarah's small Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. The decision to temporarily move in together had come naturally. His penthouse was too stark, her apartment too small, but together they'd found a brownstone in Park Slope that felt like a fresh start. "I found something," Sarah called from her bedroom. Her voice carried an odd note that made Alex look up from where he was bubble-wrapping photo frames. She emerged holding a dusty shoebox, her hands trembling slightly. "I forgot I kept these." Inside were remnants of their past life, movie ticket stubs, dried flowers from their first date, photographs of happier times. At the bottom lay a tiny pair of yellow baby shoes, the ones she'd bought the night she tried to tell him about the pregnancy. "Sarah," Alex reached for her hand. "I was so scared," she whispered, pulling out a sealed envelope. "I wrote this letter the night I left. I never mailed it." Ethan played contentedly in his playpen nearby as Alex carefully opened the envelope, the paper fragile with age. "Dear Alex, by the time you read this, if you ever do, I'll be gone. I'm carrying your child, our child, and I've never been more terrified. Your mother showed me the prenup today. She made it clear that any baby of mine would be seen as a threat, a potential gold digger's trap. I want to hate her for that, but maybe she's right. Look at us, Alex. When was the last time we had dinner together? The last time you made it home before midnight? I've been trying to tell you about the baby for days, but there's always another meeting, another deal, another reason why now isn't a good time. I love you too much to trap you in a life you never chose. Our baby deserves better than a father who sees them as an obligation, so I'm making the choice for both of us. Please don't try to find me. All my love, Sarah." Alex's hands shook as he finished reading. "I would have chosen you, both of you. Would you?" Sarah sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "The man you were then, he was brilliant and driven, but he was also lost. Maybe we needed these 5 years apart to become the people we are now." Ethan's happy squeal drew their attention. He'd pulled himself up using the playpen's edge, practicing his newfound, almost walking skills. "He's getting stronger every day," Alex observed, watching their son bounce excitedly. "I like his father." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, both the old and new versions. Alex pulled her closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "I found something too," he admitted, "at the penthouse, while packing." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Sarah's breath caught. "I bought this the week before you left," he said quietly, opening the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. "I had this whole elaborate proposal planned. Dinner at Daniel, your favorite violinist, playing our song. Alex, I'm not proposing. Not yet." He closed the box carefully. "We're still healing, still figuring out who we are together. But I want you to know that I've carried this ring for 5 years, through every failed relationship and lonely night, because some part of me never stopped hoping we'd find our way back." Sarah touched the box gently. "Keep carrying it. When the time is right, we'll know." A crash from the playpen made them both jump. Ethan had knocked over his stacking blocks, clearly proud of his destructive achievement. "Speaking of timing," Sarah laughed, moving to rescue their son from his self-made chaos. "Someone needs lunch before his nap." As she lifted Ethan, a stack of papers slid from the shoebox. Alex caught them before they hit the floor. Ultrasound images. The first pictures of their son, moments Sarah had experienced alone. "I wanted to send them to you," she said softly, noticing what he held. "Every appointment, every milestone. I thought about reaching out. What stopped you? Pride, fear. The way your mother's words kept echoing in my head." Sarah kissed Ethan's cheek as he squirmed. "But mostly, I think I was afraid you'd reject him. That would have hurt more than losing you the first time." Alex stood, crossing to them in 2 strides. He wrapped his arms around both Sarah and Ethan, creating a cocoon of warmth and security. "Never," he whispered fiercely. "I will never reject either of you again." Ethan patted Alex's face with sticky fingers, completely unaware of the emotional weight of the moment. His innocent touch grounded them, reminding them that the past, while important, wasn't where they lived anymore. The movers come tomorrow, Sarah said after a moment. Are you sure about this? Moving in together is a big step. I've missed enough steps. Alex took Ethan from her arms, expertly settling him into his high chair. His first smile, first word, first tooth. I can't get those back, but I can be here for everything else. As they moved around the kitchen in comfortable synchronization, preparing Ethan's lunch and packing the last of Sarah's dishes, Alex felt a profound sense of rightness. The penthouse had never felt like home, but this, the organized chaos of family life, the blend of their possessions, the sound of his son's laughter, this was everything. I kept a journal, Sarah said suddenly, spooning mashed sweet potatoes onto Ethan's tray. During the pregnancy and his first year, it's in that box too if you want to read it. Alex paused in his wrapping of coffee mugs. Are you sure? You deserve to know those moments, even if you couldn't be there for them. She smiled softly. And maybe we can start a new journal, together this time. The suggestion held more weight than its simple words implied. It was an invitation to not just share their future, but to heal their past. I'd like that, Alex said, watching as Ethan created abstract art with his lunch. All of it. The memories, the mess, the moments, everything. Tomorrow they would move into their new home, blending their separate lives into something whole. But today, surrounded by boxes and memories, they were already building something stronger than what they'd lost. A family forged by choice rather than obligation, held together by love that had survived 5 years of silence. And in his high chair, covered in sweet potatoes and completely unimpressed by the adult emotions swirling around him, Ethan Rutherford continued to be the bridge between their past and future, the living proof that sometimes the best things in life come from our biggest mistakes. Moving day dawned crisp and clear over Brooklyn. The brownstone on Park Slope stood waiting, its red brick facade glowing in the morning light. Inside, chaos reigned as movers navigated the narrow staircase with boxes and furniture, from 2 separate lives attempting to merge into one. Alex stood in what would be Ethan's new room, directing the placement of a custom-built crib, a compromise between his desire to give their son the best and Sarah's preference for simplicity. The walls were still bare, waiting for the pediatrician-approved, non-toxic paint to arrive. And the master bedroom furniture is here, called one of the movers. Where would you like the bed? Ask Ms. Bennett. Alex replied automatically. They were still navigating the delicate dance of sharing space. Separate bedrooms. For now, another compromise that felt right for their rebuilding relationship. Sarah appeared in the doorway, Ethan balanced on her hip. The bed goes against the east wall, she instructed. And Alex? Your mother's lawyer is downstairs. Alex's jaw tightened. I thought we were done with her attempts at interference. He says it's about Grandfather Rutherford's trust fund. Sarah bounced Ethan gently as he fussed. Something about amendments that need immediate attention. Descending the stairs, Alex found James Morrison, his family's longtime attorney, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the midst of moving chaos. Oh, this couldn't wait, Alex asked, leading him to the only clear corner of the living room. I'm afraid not. James pulled out a thick folder. Your grandfather's trust has specific provisions about family residences. By moving in here with Ms. Bennett and young Ethan, you've triggered certain clauses. What kind of clauses? The trust stipulates that any Rutherford heir living in a family unit must be provided with appropriate housing through the trust. It's non-negotiable. James adjusted his glasses. The brownstone, it's lovely, but it doesn't meet the trust's requirements. Alex ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The whole point was to start fresh, away from Rutherford money and influence. I understand, but there's more. James lowered his voice. Your mother is challenging the trust's distribution based on your living arrangements. She's arguing that without marriage, Ms. Bennett and Ethan aren't technically family members under trust laws. That's ridiculous. The DNA test proves paternity, yes, but trust law is complicated. Unless you and Miss Bennett marry, she could create legal hurdles that would affect Ethan's inheritance. Upstairs, they could hear Ethan's delighted squeals as Sarah unpacked his toys. The sound made Alex's heart clench. What are our options? You could fight it in court, James said carefully. Or you could simply comply with the trust's housing requirements. There's a Rutherford property in Brooklyn Heights, much larger, already held in trust. Moving there would satisfy both the housing clause and strengthen your position against Victoria's challenges. No, Alex's response was immediate. This home, this neighborhood, it was Sarah's choice. I won't let my mother's manipulations change that. Then there's only one other option. James hesitated. A marriage would solve everything. The trust couldn't be challenged. The housing requirements would become flexible, and Ethan's position would be secure. Alex stared at the lawyer. Are you suggesting I propose to Sarah because of a trust fund? I'm suggesting you protect your family however you can. James stood, straightening his tie. Victoria may have lost her position at the company, but she still has influence. Think about it. After James left, Alex climbed the stairs slowly, his mind churning. He found Sarah in Ethan's room, singing softly as she arranged stuffed animals in a corner. Everything okay? She asked, noting his expression. Just more family complications. He picked up Ethan, who immediately grabbed his tie. How do you feel about this place? Really? Sarah looked around the sun-filled room. I love it. It's perfect for us. Why? What if we had other options? Bigger places, better neighborhoods? Alex. Sarah's voice held a warning note. We agreed. No more Rutherford influence. This is our fresh start. He watched her continue unpacking, her movements precise and determined. The ring in his pocket, transferred from suit to suit since that board meeting, felt heavier than ever. Sarah, there's something we need to discuss. A loud crash from downstairs interrupted him. They rushed to find a mover apologizing profusely over a broken box marked fragile. Sarah knelt by the box, carefully lifting out shattered pieces of what had been her grandmother's china. Oh no, she whispered. We'll replace it, Alex said automatically. That's not the point. Sarah's voice cracked. These pieces, they were all I had left of her. Some things can't be replaced with money, Alex. I thought you understood that now. The words hit him like a physical blow. Here he was, about to suggest marriage for practical reasons, when they were still learning to trust each other again. You're right, he said softly. I'm sorry. The rest of the day passed in a blur of boxes and decisions. By nightfall, the movers were gone, leaving them alone in their half-unpacked home. Ethan had fallen asleep in his new room, the baby monitor carrying his gentle breathing. Sarah found Alex on the back terrace, staring at the Brooklyn skyline. Penny, for your thoughts? I was thinking about choices, he said, pulling her close, about how sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same. Is this about what James said? About the trust? Alex turned to face her. You heard? Bits and pieces. Sarah traced patterns on his chest. You know I don't care about any of that, right? The money, the properties, the Rutherford name, none of it matters compared to what we're building here. Even if it means fighting my mother's legal challenges, protecting Ethan's inheritance, even then, Sarah smiled softly. We'll face it together, just like everything else. Inside, Ethan made a small sound in his sleep, a reminder of what truly mattered. Alex kissed Sarah's forehead, breathing in the scent of home and possibility. The ring could wait. Their love had survived 5 years of separation. It could survive his mother's machinations. What they were building here, in this brownstone with its creaky stairs and morning sun, was worth more than all the trust funds in the world. Together, he repeated, holding her close as night settled over Brooklyn. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they had this moment, this home, this family, and that was everything. The crisp autumn morning found Sarah alone in the brownstone's kitchen, reading Victoria Rutherford's latest attempt at reconciliation. The letter had arrived by courier, its heavy cream envelope bearing the Rutherford family crest. Dearest Sarah, it began, the formal calligraphy at odds with its contents. As Ethan's grandmother, I have a right to be part of his life. Surely you can understand a mother's desire to protect her family. Sarah set the letter aside as Ethan's cries echoed through the baby monitor. In his room, she found him standing in his crib, tears streaking his cheeks. Bad dream, little one. She lifted him, breathing in his sweet morning scent. At 14 months, he was becoming more expressive every day, his personality shining through in ways that reminded her constantly of Alex. Alex had left early for a brief return to the office, his first since stepping back 3 months ago. The company needed his input on the Miller merger, though he'd promised to be home by noon. As Sarah changed Ethan's diaper, her phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte Hayes. Turn on the news. Now talk to. With Ethan on her hip, Sarah rushed downstairs to the living room. The TV flickered to life, revealing Victoria Rutherford standing outside Rutherford Enterprises. Concerns about the company's direction, Victoria was saying to a crowd of reporters. My son's personal choices have impacted shareholder confidence. The board needs to consider. Sarah's phone rang. Alex, I'm on my way home, he said before she could speak. Don't listen to her. James is handling it. What's she trying to do? Create doubt. Make the shareholders nervous about my commitment to the company. His voice hardened. She's calling for another board vote. Can she do that? No, but she can damage the stock price trying. Road noise filled the background. How's Ethan? As if on cue, their son reached for the TV, babbling "dada" at Alex's photo, now displayed beside Victoria's. Missing you, Sarah said softly. We both are. I'll be home soon. I love you. The words, I am still new in their reconciliation, made Sarah's heart skip. We love you too. After hanging up, Sarah carried Ethan to the kitchen, settling him in his high chair. As she prepared his breakfast, another text arrived, this one from an unknown number. Ems. Bennett, Victoria Rutherford would like to meet. Just you and her. Regarding Ethan's future. Name your time and place. Sarah stared at the message, her hands trembling slightly. The last private conversation she'd had with Victoria had ended with her fleeing New York, pregnant and heartbroken. What do you think, little man? She asked Ethan, who was methodically dropping Cheerios onto the floor. Should mommy face the dragon lady? Ethan's response was a happy giggle and a thrown sippy cup. Before Sarah could decide, the doorbell rang. Through the front window, she saw a familiar figure. Not Victoria, but someone almost as unexpected. Mrs. Hayes. Sarah opened the door to find Charlotte, Alex's interim CEO, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I'm sorry to come unannounced, Charlotte said, stepping inside. But there's something you need to know. Something Alex doesn't know yet. Sarah led her to the kitchen, where Ethan immediately began performing for their visitor. Victoria's been meeting with private investigators, Charlotte continued, accepting a coffee. She's building a case against you. What kind of case? She's trying to prove you deliberately hid Ethan to extort money from the family. Charlotte's expression was grim. She's interviewed your old neighbors, your former co-workers, anyone who knew you during the pregnancy. Sarah sank into a chair. That's ridiculous. I never asked for anything. I know. But Victoria's desperate. Without the company, without control over Alex, she's losing her identity. Charlotte leaned forward. She thinks if she can prove you manipulated the situation, she can convince the board that Alex's judgment is compromised. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe Alex. He believed in me when no one else did, gave me opportunities I never thought possible. Charlotte glanced at Ethan, who was watching them with curious green eyes. And because I've seen how happy he is now, with you and Ethan, Victoria can't be allowed to destroy that. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number, more insistent this time. She'll keep pushing until she gets what she wants, Charlotte warned, rising to leave. Be careful, Sarah. Victoria Rutherford is most dangerous when she feels cornered. After Charlotte left, Sarah read Victoria's letter again, seeing it with new eyes. The carefully chosen words, the subtle manipulation, it was all there. Ethan's laughter drew her attention back to the present. He'd managed to create an impressive artwork with his breakfast, smearing banana across his high chair tray. What would you do? Sarah asked him, cleaning his sticky hands. If someone threatened everything you loved. The front door opened, and Alex's voice called out, Sarah. She met him in the hallway, taking in his worried expression. How bad is it? The stock's down 15%. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. But that's not what matters. Are you okay? Both of you. Sarah thought about Victoria's letter, the text messages, Charlotte's warning. She thought about 5 years ago when fear and manipulation had torn them apart. I want to meet with her, Sarah said finally. Alex stiffened. My mother? Absolutely not. Yes. Sarah pulled back to meet his eyes. She won't stop, Alex. Not until she feels heard. She lost that right when she did exactly what a mother would do to protect her child. Sarah's voice was gentle. I understand her better now. Being a mother myself, she was wrong, but her fear was real. In his high chair, Ethan called out, Dada, imperiously, demanding attention. Alex moved to their son, lifting him with practiced ease. I can't risk losing you again. You won't. Sarah touched his cheek. But we need to end this. For all of us. Alex studied her face, seeing the determination there. Then we do it together. No. Sarah took a deep breath. This has to be between Victoria and me. Mother to mother. Sarah, trust me. She wrapped her arms around both Alex and Ethan, creating a circle of warmth. It's time to break this cycle of fear. For Ethan's sake. For all our sakes. Alex held them tighter, and Sarah felt his surrender in the way his shoulders relaxed. Outside, autumn leaves danced past their windows, carrying the promise of change. Sarah reached for her phone, typing a response to the unknown number. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. The Botanical Gardens. Just us. It was time to face the past, not with fear, but with the strength that came from knowing who she was now. Not just Sarah Bennett, the girl who ran away, but Sarah Bennett, the mother who would fight for her family's future. And this time, she wasn't running anywhere. The Brooklyn Botanical Gardens were quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah sat on a bench near the Japanese hill and pond garden, watching koi fish create ripples in the dark water. She'd arrived early, needing time to center herself before facing Victoria Rutherford. She thought back to that morning, how Alex had held her a little tighter before leaving for the office. You don't have to do this, he'd whispered against her hair, but they both knew she did. Victoria arrived precisely at 2, her Chanel suit incongruous among the natural beauty of the gardens. She moved with the same regal grace Sarah remembered, but there were new lines around her eyes, a slight tremor in her perfectly manicured hands.